Hello and good morning or good afternoon. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast, and we've got another great guest today. I'd like to introduce her. This is Christine Bannon-Rodrigues, who is a 10th degree black belt in Oki-Ryu Kenpo and has been studying martial arts for 43 years. She also trains and teaches Wushu, Krav Maga, and Kickboxing. Christine and her husband, Don, who also is her instructor, are two of only three people to have ever been certified by three of the Kenpo pioneers in the U.S. Grandmaster Nick Cerio, Grandmaster Ed Parker, and Grandmaster George Pesare. Her and her husband own a school in Warwick, Rhode Island, the Don Rodrigues Karate Academy. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Excellent. Well, I love this opportunity because for me, when I started this podcast, the idea behind it was I wanted to highlight and recognize, pioneers in the martial arts, people that inspired me and motivated me. And you are definitely one of the pioneers in sport karate. I can remember as I was beginning my martial arts training when I would read Black Belt magazine or, all the different publications that were out there. You had graced the cover several times and talked about quite a bit. So it's an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to interview you today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So now tell me, let's just kind of start from the beginning. How did you get involved in martial arts?
Really, it wasn't, a lot of people get picked on or whatever, and then or have a circumstance where they feel like they need to learn self-defense. And that's not really the case. I just did it as an after-school activity with a girlfriend. I had played softball and basketball and gymnastics and figure skating and just about tried everything. I was decent at everything, but there was nothing that really hit me that I really fell in love with. And then, my girlfriend asked me if I wanted to try martial arts because her brother was studying kind of at a private school. And so I said, yeah, I'll try it. So the rest is history after that. And I think she probably quit within the first year, and then I just fell in love with it. I really enjoyed it. And then I got into the competition aspect of it and everything else, years later. So it was quite a history there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, tell me, what year did you start training in martial arts? 43 years, right? So
1980.
1980. And dare I ask, how old were you at that time?
I was 13.
13.
Yeah. And then, I was just before high school, and, it was something to do after school. I enjoyed it. You could go as many nights as you wanted back then. Mm-hmm. And, there were several hour classes, I think the classes were 2 hours long or something like that. So, I just went as much as I could and just really enjoyed it. And, after I think I started competing within the first year, I think I was an orange belt at my first tournament. So got involved kind of early with that. But really, the competition thing really hit me more when I earned my black belt and then was able to see my name in the ratings. And it was a little more challenging rather than just, winning trophy to trophy from one event to the next. Mm-hmm. But seeing my name in the ratings gave me a little more goal setting there.
Right, for sure. Absolutely. And you mentioned something really interesting because, a lot of people do start martial arts because, mom or dad want them to gain confidence or they were getting bullied or, for people in my era, it was because of Karate Kid or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that. But you had tried other sports and other activities when you were a little bit younger. So what was it about the sports that just maybe didn't grab you, or did you have some success in these other ones and it was just time to maybe move on and do something else?
Well, like I said, I was average at most of the sports. Nothing, not your A star in the different ones that I played. So you spend some time sitting on the bench. You're out there as much as they can possibly put you out there and as needed. But I would say this, the martial arts, I think gymnastics as well, and figure skating were more of an individual sport. Mm-hmm. And you still had that team feeling because you had your fellow classmates, whether you went to a tournament or just training with them. But so it was like kind of like, you had teammates, but it was still an individual sport. So you participated 100% of the time. If you lost, it was on your shoulders. It wasn't like, you missed that one shot and the team lost. And,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't feel that kind of pressure. And, I think that's what really excited me about it, that I could be involved all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I felt it challenging being one of the few women or girls at the time involved in the classes or the tournaments. So I kind of took that as a challenge rather than a negative aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find, and I'm sure you do as well, being an instructor, that children try team sports, and it's quote, it's not for them. Then they come and they try martial arts, and they do fall in love with it because they are supported by their classmates. They do have a coach, they have an instructor, or a group of instructors, but their success, earning your belt or earning a stripe or earning a trophy in a competition is an individual success, and people really thrive off of that. Now, before we talk about your tournament career and getting started in tournaments, I want to back up maybe just a little bit more and just talk about your childhood and your upbringing. Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born and raised my first 5 years in Providence, Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to Warwick, which was more of a suburban, not as big of a city atmosphere, and a little safer place. And, my parents bought a house in Warwick back when I was 5 and was there up until, years ago. We kind of moved out of the area to a different area in Rhode Island, but our school's still in Warwick. So, I'd say pretty much raised in Warwick, Rhode Island. I went to a few different schools as a kid, not so much because of my moving, but moving my babysitters, who would, as my parents worked, a lot of hours, I would have to be at someone to take care of me and take me to the school. So sometimes I'd switch a school because of that. But then 5th grade, I started St. Kevin's, went to a Catholic school, and then then to a public high school and so forth. But that's pretty much, I have one brother, so it was a small family. He's 7 years younger than me, I believe. So it's it's not like we were very close in age and played together or did different things. So I almost feel like an only child, because of that age gap, and he was much younger. But I would say one of the biggest things is when I was younger, and still now, but not as bad now. I was very, very shy, and so it was always, I made friends and stuff, but as far as doing things out in the public and stuff like that, or talking to people that I didn't know, was always very, very difficult for me. So
And I'm sure, the martial arts over time brought out that personality and brought out, kind of got rid of the shyness, right?
right. Well, like, it gave me the confidence not to, shy away from certain things or whatever. I think I still have that shyness, but I try to put it on the back burner as even as a business owner. You have to talk to those people even if you don't know them, and welcome them to your school and be friendly. So, it's something I still feel uncomfortable with, but I do it, and
Right.
I have more confidence with it. So, but as a kid, I definitely would not.
Hey, let me give a quick shout out. Dana Abbott is watching. Hey, Dana, how are you? Good to see you guys. Make sure to check out Dana's interview as well on Master Motivation Podcast. So thanks for tuning in, sir. And let me know if you have any questions. Tell me what it was like. I'm in California on the West Coast, right? So, culture here is a little different than what it might be, on the East Coast in Rhode Island. So tell me what it was like, growing up there. What's it like in Rhode Island?
You know, I think everybody's childhood is a lot different back then than it is nowadays. There were no iPads and all that fun stuff. But I would just say, like a typical kid going out and playing, riding bikes or doing whatever, when the street lights come on, you're home,
Right.
that was pretty much. My parents were very strict, and that was probably another reason what got me into martial arts is if it was a school night, I wasn't going out. So no going out with your friends or doing something. But if I was involved in a sport, that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was like, oh, okay, I don't want to stay home every single night. I mean, you got so much homework you can do, and that's it. So I think that's one of the reasons that prompted me to want to do the martial arts. It was just another activity we could do, and it was a year-round sport. So it wasn't just, you had a season for a couple months and then you were done. So kind of got me to be able to go out and see my friends, several nights a week and stuff. So, but they were very strict parents on that side. Nothing wrong with that. But, my parents passed away when I was pretty young. So I was like 20 to 23, I think I was 22. So they had both passed away in the same year. So it was, tough obstacles to get over and being the legal guardian of my brother at the time and stuff, because he was only 16.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a wake up call of, okay, now reality, you got to really adult and take care of things. So
Yeah. Had to grow up real quick right
yeah.
away. Yeah. So tell me, what role did your parents have in your martial arts training when you first started? Were they supportive right away, and were they supportive all throughout?
They were very supportive. My mother was not a fan of watching me fight, especially in competition. She'd get very nervous that I was going to get hurt or something, and but they were both very supportive. And I went to my first world championship when they were still both alive, and so they loved to see me succeed in something that I love to do. So
Mm-hmm.
my mother used to always say, not the ballet dancer I expected, but it's all good.
Yeah. Now tell me about the experience of starting martial arts at 13 years old. What was the system that you started? Tell me about your instructors and your memories of your first, few classes.
I started in Oki-Ryu Kenpo, which is, what I still train and teach in. Don Rodrigues, who is my husband now, was my instructor from day one. He was a commercial shell fisherman, so he taught martial arts, not as a business.
Mm-hmm.
So he had like a private area that he would rent out from somebody. So it wasn't a commercialized school at all. Kind of had to know someone to get in and join. So that's how I ended up there. And then, we ended up opening a commercial school in 1985, 84 or 85. And it was basically because I was competing so much and traveling so much that he's like, okay, this is getting costly. You kind of need to support what you're doing. So I opened our first commercial school. He kept his private school. I had mine that was a commercial school. And then eventually, like 5 years later, we ended up joining both schools because they were getting so big and just figured to 100%, teach martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty crazy, because if you started in 1980 at 13 years old, you were less than 18 years old when you opened your school. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So that was a challenge. It was a challenge, not so much on the age, but being a female. So, if guys would call wanting information on the school, and I would say, okay, yes, I teach an adult class at 6:00. It'd be like click or okay, I'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So then I learned to just say, yes, there's an adult class at this time, come in and watch.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't know I was the instructor, and I wouldn't let them know that I was the instructor until I got there. And then when they witnessed the class and, could see how well I could teach, and also how well my students were. I mean, I had guys bunch of guys that were, 6 foot plus and, very athletic. So, they knew that it wasn't just, that I could only teach young girls or something like that. So that was a challenge at the beginning. I don't find that as much of a challenge with society nowadays. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, well, I remember I started a little bit later. 85 is when I started training martial arts, and I had 2 distinct female instructors at the time, Tiffany Wing, Kathy Grunwald, and these were fighters. I mean, they were tough women, and I remember as I started, learning to teach, and they would talk with me about this, about how, as a woman, it was a little more challenging than the guys to be able to teach. And I always thought that was weird, because I'm like, well, you guys taught me, and you guys would kick my ass, like, no problem. Right. They were like the toughest chicks ever. And so, but talk about that a little bit more as a female martial artist, that stigma early on, and how you overcame it, and how, like you said, it is different now, right? Society has changed a bit, but back then in the 80s, I think that there's definitely a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still carry that. There's still places you go, and people that still think that it's just a man should be a center ref in a fighting division, or a man should be the one doing certain things. But back then it was getting over, like, as an instructor, like I had, the only way to get past that was to get people in the door and not let them know until they physically, see you teach and what you're capable of doing. So, they're more of a believer once they see it.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was probably the biggest challenge as far as an instructor goes. Competition wise, it was tough, because we were all in the same division for the longest time, where men and women were in the same division for forms and weapons, not so much for fighting. But it's come a long way, where they've got the females separated from the men, in all aspects of competition, whether it's forms, weapons, or actual hand, combat. So, but back then, competing against them in forms of weapons, it's hard to be stronger than a guy who's 6 foot and 200 and something pounds. I mean, the judges to look at pound for pound, who's showing more power out there in their form, who's you expect them to be strong, they should be. So one of the ways I kind of overcame that was, my husband said, you're very flexible. And back then you didn't make up your own forms. You didn't, come out and do some kind of crazy, creative thing. So he said, you have great flexibility. You could learn you took gymnastics before. You could probably do a lot of these moves. You can full split, you can kick straight up, but the traditional forms weren't, especially a Kenpo form, is not calling for a straight up kick. It's not calling, for doing any kind of flips or crazy moves. So he recommended, why don't you try studying Kung Fu or Wushu? So I started training in Wushu, and that's where I was able to do, even just with traditional Wushu forms, they have aerial cartwheels, they have butterfly kicks, you do a jump kick and you land into a split. They have a lot of crazy, athletic moves in their routines.
Right.
So that's what got me involved in Wushu. I didn't start that until after I made my black belt. And then, I was able to use some of the things that I excel in, to showcase that when I was out there competing, rather than just going head to head, let me be stronger than you, and better stances and everything else, where I could use some other assets that I have against those guys. So that's where that all started. And then they started to divide the men and the women in forms and weapons competition. But I would say at the beginning in fighting, they did have the women separated, but I had the option when I was 13, I had the option to either compete with the juniors, where they used to call it Pee-wee and mini Pee-wee and junior division. I could compete in the junior with the boys, and boys at 13, 14, 15 years old, as you know, could be my size, or they could have had that growth spurt and they're like 6'5" and 200 pounds. And, or I could have competed in the women's division. So my instructor said, I think you should go in the women's division. It's safer. At least you're going to fight women and, they'll be close to your size. So that's what I did. But at that time, they only had one division. So it was white to black belt.
Wow.
So my first tournament as an orange belt, I fought a black belt. And it just happened to be Larry Kelly's wife. Larry Kelly was a very dominant force here on the East Coast and on the national circuit years ago. He passed away recently, not too long ago, but it was his wife that I had to fight. So that was quite the experience. But I always opted to go in the women's division, and I stayed in the junior division for forms and weapons until I turned adult.
So, you mentioned earlier on that, competing in tournaments helped you to set goals, right? Seeing your name on the leaderboard and watching your rankings go up. It wasn't really getting the trophy, one at a time each tournament, but talk about the circuit that you started on, because there's, back then there's very few, and now that seems like there's so many different circuits to follow. But talk about that and talk about some of your favorite competitors.
Well, I started seeing my name in the ratings, and at that time, Black Belt Magazine did the ratings. I'm sorry, not Karate. Karate Illustrated did the ratings, and they would have different regions around the country, and we were region 12 in New England. So my goal was to be number one in, one of the divisions. I was ranked in the forms and the weapons for the adults, which was with the men, and then ranked in the women's fighting. And then I became, higher in the ratings and became number one. I think, chasing those points and stuff, like you could go outside your region as well, or do, to earn points. So there was sometimes I'd jump over to region 11, which was New York, and do a couple tournaments on a weekend there and then come back. So it was crazy. I think one year I did, 53 tournaments in the year or something like that. So it was pretty crazy, but, it was exciting chase. They always say climbing the ladder is a lot of fun. When you're up at the top, it's a lot tougher, Oh, yeah. It's not as fun because everyone's gunning for you. So, I'm in that ladder and trying to earn those points and become number one and then become number one in all three divisions, because most people only concentrated either on the forms and weapons or just the fighting. So I would do all the divisions, even if they, and then I got my first taste of a national tournament. So I think that was at the Bluegrass Nationals. And, I was putting gear on, sitting next to people like Linda Denley and all these people that I see on magazines, and they're actually at the same ring with me, which was, kind of was amazing to me, but it was, scary at the same time. But then I just kind of did the same thing on the national circuit. That was my goal, was to be number one in all those divisions. And after that, I wanted to become number one in the world. So it was, I went to the world championships. And after I went to the world championships, I competed on a lot of different, you mentioned circuits and stuff, but, back then it was Black Belt Magazine. I keep saying Black Belt, Karate Illustrated Magazine. And then NASCA was taken over. Back then, I think it was Cesar Bukowski that was the president, and then it went to Larry Conahan, who's the current president of NASCA. But pretty much the Karate Illustrated ratings turned into NASCA. But I had also done NBL, had done NAKC, PKL. I did pretty much Crane, did a lot of them. And then I went to my first world championships, which is WACO. And there's a lot of organizations out there that have world championships, but some of them are like 5 to 10 countries involved, that show up and they don't have a big team, that they get added to that list of 10 countries that are there. But, one country only has like 3 or 4 competitors or something, but WACO was back then in the early 90s. It was, God, I'm trying to think. I think they had like 80 something countries involved, and they're much higher now. I mean, I don't know if it's 100 and I don't even know, 130, 40. There's crazy amount of countries that are involved, and they all take like, 100 people from their country, So yeah, so it's pretty crazy, and that competing there, I won a gold medal in forms and a bronze in fighting the first time I went in Venice. But after I went there, I was like, that's it. I'm coming back. I want to win a gold in every division. I mean, I was just, it was the closest thing that a martial artist is going to feel to the Olympics. I mean, now we do have,
Right.
some kind of martial art, the Olympics and stuff, but it was definitely the closest thing you're going to get to being in the Olympics, having the national anthem play and being up on the podium and having the medal put around your neck and, just that, that USA chant, USA, USA, just, it's people that you fight against all the time here in the States. Now they're your teammates and you're on the same side and all trying to earn those gold medals and, come back with the most for your country. It's an amazing feeling. So, I did that and then, eventually decided to retire from competition. So.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that, you took on, multiple divisions. A lot of times, you find people that compete that solely focus on fighting or they solely focus on their forms or their weapons. And that's kind of like, it almost seemed like at a lot of tournaments that I went to, that you would have this total division of the competitors, right? But
Right.
you did it all, and it was something that was always special to me. Is that my instructor always encouraged that as well. If you're going to go to a tournament, do it all. Do the whole experience. Compete
Right.
in everything, and be a well-rounded martial artist is what his comment to me was. So I just love the fact that you did it all, and you did it within different systems or styles of martial arts as
Right.
well. You took on the Wushu to play to your strengths more or less, to have a better competition experience. So when did you retire?
I retired in 93. I had won, the next time I went back, I won 3 gold medals. So I won it in all three categories. And then, I was playing around with the idea of possibly retiring, but, they had said, all the different countries were saying it was a fluke thing. And, like I had a lucky day and that could never happen again because I set a world record within the organization as far as being the only person to ever do that. So I wanted to go back and prove them wrong. So I went back and won 3 more gold medals. And then after that, I mean, I had like a, I don't even know if it was like 13-month winning streak on NASCAR, I mean, winning every single in fighting. So, it was more news. Someone scored a point on you or did something outstanding on you than, me winning. So it wasn't, making the news anymore. If you won the grand championship somewhere, it would be like, oh, it was really close. She won by 2 points this time. And, so became, it wasn't as big of a challenge anymore going out there and winning once you've done it so many times. And I wanted that challenge again. So unplanned, I ended up getting asked to do the stunt double for Hilary Swank on the next Karate Kid movie. Like I said, it was unplanned. I knew Pat Johnson for a long, long time. We were very good friends. And I never brought up about, the movie stuff. Never said, oh, if you need someone, call me. But he did need someone, and he was up in Boston filming that movie, and he's like, I need someone of high caliber that can, do these moves. I mean, this is the whole point of the whole movie. So, so he called me, and I went up there, and we kind of sized up pretty good, and that was my first thing. Then I felt like all over again, like a white belt, learning the tricks of the trade and how to fight on screen and all the terminology and just learning everything. I was like, okay, I felt that challenge again to be able to achieve something. So
yeah,
kind of got out of competition and started, pursuing that more.
Yeah. Well, that's I didn't know that actually, that you had that relationship with Pat Johnson. You know, my lineage actually goes directly through my instructor Dennis Ichikawa to Pat Johnson and Chuck Norris. So that's where I come from. So I think that's just kind of a neat similarity there. But
Yes.
now, did you go on to do more movies, and did you do Full Contact as well at one point?
I did. I was training in kickboxing because my husband trained kickboxers. Some that went for world title fights and everything, back in the day when that was the big thing,
Hmm.
kickboxing. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And I trained in the kickboxing, but unlike a karate tournament, you can just show up at a karate tournament and you could have, 5, 10, 20 people in your division. And, you just fight down to see who the winner is going to be. Kickboxing, they do it by weight. And at my weight level, there was like nobody locally. You'd have to fly across the country to, fight someone. And it was just, I wasn't getting any fights. There
Hmm.
was nothing locally that I could, do my first kickboxing fight, a real fight. So
Hmm.
I trained for a while with it and stuff, but then I was like, you know, there was nothing at the end of the at
Yeah.
the end of the workday to be proud of that you could go out there and fight and hopefully win. So I stopped doing it. And then as far as the other movies go, I did I think the next thing I was on was the WMAC Masters TV show that Fox ran for 2 seasons, and played my own character, Lady Lightning. And that was a lot of fun because it was with all martial artists that I knew, and some I didn't know at the time, but got to know very well because we
Hmm.
were together so long,
Hmm.
for months on end. And it was all legitimate champions, in different styles. You had Bridget Riley, who was a boxing champ, kickboxing, and you had Her Perez, who was a gold medal Olympics for Taekwondo, and you had other sport karate people like Hosung Park and Hakeem Alston and Larry Lamb, and we just had a great group of people together, and that was a lot of fun. And then we did 2 seasons of that, and then I did Batman and Robin, where I stunt doubled for Alicia Silverstone. And then, from there, I just started putting work came to the Boston area over here on the East Coast. So, did several different things like under, Underdog, where I just did driving and just regular stunt, no martial arts at all.
Hmm.
And just different movies over here that I was able to jump in and do some stunt work. And still doing it. I think the last thing I did was the end of last year. I did um oh god, I can't think of the name of it right now, but I was able to work with my son, who's kind of taken on into my footsteps and doing a lot of stunt work. So he's doing very well with it. So we were actually the first time we were able to work on the same movie together.
Huh, wow, how fun. That's really cool. So you had a great experience working in the movie industry.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I talked to Herb Perez was on the show, and we talked a lot about WMAC Masters. I can remember that pretty vividly, and it was just it was such a unique thing. I mean, that was pre Mortal Kombat, days, and but
Mhm.
it just a really cool show. I thought, back in the day, because you didn't really have a lot of stuff that highlighted martial arts,
Right.
right, at that time. I mean, you had Bruce Lee, then you had Chuck Norris, and then you have these different movies that really kind of sprinkle in the martial arts, but nothing that was really focused on that type of show. Any other memories, experiences about that show that you remember or talk about?
Um, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Mortal Kombat, which was my Mortal Kombat story is Pat Johnson asked me to go over there to double Katana, I believe. And um, I was like, okay, I mean, didn't have kids at the time, didn't, I mean, I have my school, and it was kind of hard to leave for that many months because everything else was, even when I was filming MAC Masters, you would have a 3 or 4 month season of filming, but I'd be coming back and forth. I'd come back home for a
Right.
week and go back down, and it wasn't that separated, but Mortal Kombat was going to be done in Thailand. And I was like, okay, so I was kind of hesitant a little bit, about leaving for so long and stuff. But I was working Batman and Robin, the movie, and came home for Christmas just in time. And then we were supposed to leave to go to Thailand for Mortal Kombat right after the first of the year. So I went to the hospital, had a travel clinic, and I had to get the malaria pills and some tetanus shots and different shots and stuff to go overseas, because we were going to be pretty much in the, jungle area. We weren't going to be in the city. So it was required to get all these kinds of shots. And so they asked the typical question, like, even when you go to get x-rays, any chance of being pregnant? I'm like, I guess there's always a chance, I mean, nothing I was planning. So they're like, oh, we can't give you any of the medication. We can't do any of the shots until we do a pregnancy test. And I was like, okay, we'll do it, because, I got to leave in 2 days. I need,
Yeah.
So, so that's how I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. So technically I always tell Dante it's definitely in his blood, because he was in my stomach when I was filming Batman and Robin. So, so I had to call Mr. Johnson and say, I have some good news and bad news. And he said, I am so happy for you. But now I'm not happy for me, and I got to figure something out, and I got no time. So I had to cancel out on him. But, I was lucky enough, after I had him done, they did some TV shows with Mortal Kombat. So I was able to go down to Florida and shoot did some double work on one of the TV shows for it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go back and talk a little bit more about your martial arts school. So you started your first school at a really young age. And that, starting a business by itself is a challenge, but starting without any experience, right? No business experience. You hadn't even entered college yet. What were some of the early struggles that you remember, above and beyond being a female and dealing with that we've already talked about, but what were some things that were really a struggle when you first opened that school?
Well, I was in college, because I graduated high school when I was 17. So I was in college. I wanted to be a doctor, and then I knew the amount of time and commitment to be a doctor. It was kind of my dream my whole life as a kid. But I said, I don't want to be a nurse and just, giving shots and changing bedpans and doing, I wanted something a little more exciting. So I was going to school to be a surgical nurse. So I kind of dropped down my expectations, because I wanted to still do the martial arts, but I went to school for a surgical nurse. And then with the school and traveling and everything else, after the first year, it didn't pan out. But my whole high school time, back then they had business classes or they had college courses. So if you were going to college, you were taking, I had 4 years of French, and I had, chemistry and biology and all these, trigonometry and algebra 2 and all these classes, where the other kids that were my friends were in, typing and bookkeeping and accounting and just doing all these different business courses that they offered back then, which would have been perfect,
right?
But I didn't take anything like that. So, I walked in and, not the greatest typer, as far as using a computer and doing all that stuff. And the bookkeeping, luckily my mother was a bookkeeper as well. So she, could teach me a little bit, but yeah, I kind of had to figure it out as I went. I had no experience as far as how to advertise, how to answer the business end of the school, going out on the floor and teaching and doing a great job. That was a, piece of cake. But when it came to doing the business side of it, as the school grew, it was more challenging. And it's, something that I'm still learning every day, and in today's society and technology, it's changing so much every day. And I've stayed up on it an awful lot because of the business. Like I need to learn, how do I do ads on Facebook? How do I do Instagram ads? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I run this program so that my school's more efficient and they have automated emails going out, when you miss a class, where I'm not typing, gee, we missed you in class today, like where things are more automated. So learning all that stuff, I definitely see when I meet up with some friends that I went to school with or whatever, that technology that, they're like trying to figure out how to do something on their smartphone, or, like that they really struggle because they haven't been forced to learn, like
Right.
I feel like I've been forced and I stay on top of it. So every time something new's coming out, I'm learning how to do it. Where a lot of people, if they weren't in the position to need it, they're so lost with the technology nowadays. So, but the school is, like I said, back in 90, we joined our schools together, my husband and I, and just did it kind of full time. And, after my first year of college, I couldn't be out in California, have a 3-hour time difference plus a 6-hour flight home or whatever it is. And be up in school at 7:00 the next day doing exams and stuff. I mean, I just, I take my hat off to the people that can do that and travel and compete and stay up on school like that. But I found it very difficult. Plus I had the school that I was running as well. So, I just said, I can always go back to school. That's something that I can always do. People go to school when they're in their 50s, 60s, any age, So I said, it's something I can always go back to. My body might not be physically, wanting to train like this and fight and do these form routines and stuff. Oddly, now they have like a 60 and up division, so that and a 50 and up division and a 40 and up division. So, now those divisions are pretty full. You see a lot of people out there competing still, but back then I was just thinking, it was 18 and up or whatever it was. And, I wanted to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And then I could always go back to school, but just kind of fell in love with even the teaching aspect of it as well. And happy with, where life kind of turned me off the beaten path. But
yeah. Now, early on, you were a member of Team Paul Mitchell. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I was, talking about being a female in the martial arts and the challenges and stuff. I like to think of myself as someone who's helped break barriers for people by being a female. That's, kind of paving the way for other young girls out there. And as far as the Paul Mitchell team goes, I was the first female to be added to the team. It was only a male team at the time. I was on the Atlantic team, or the Trans World Oil team back then. And so I don't know if you remember that team. Chuck Merriman was the coach, and my teammates were Lee Blanks and Nasty Anderson and Linda Denley and Kevin Thompson and, Terry Kramer, Anthony Price, Richard Blood. I mean, just, it was a who's who of in the martial arts that was on that team. And then I ended up joining my husband's team. So, and being the first woman on the Paul Mitchell team. So that was, I like that title of being the first female on the team and stuff, but there's been some amazing women have come after me on that team. That they've all been phenomenal and going off into movies or, different things. And it's got quite a history there with the Paul Mitchell team. But right now I'm retired from competition. I'm a retired member of Team Paul Mitchell, but I coach my own team, which is Team CBR. And for my initials, because everyone's like, what's CBR? My initials. But I have a sponsor, which is one of my students that's on the team. His father is sponsoring the team. And that's Anthony Zangari and Ocean State Collision Center. So he sponsors the team. And, it's great to be able to give, some people an opportunity to go out there and compete and have some of their expenses paid and be part of a nice group of competitors. So, it's been very, very exciting being on the opposite end and coaching.
Yeah. Now, when did you join Team Paul Mitchell?
That was in, I want to say 89 or 90.
And how many years had Team Paul Mitchell been around prior to that?
It had been around probably, God, maybe, I forget, because they've run like so many years anniversary now. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 40. But I would say like 85 or 86 at the team's, probably 86 that the team started for Paul Mitchell, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a small local group of guys, you know, Pedro Xavier and Steve Babcock and Mike Conroy. And, you know, it was just a small group of really good fighters locally. But then they started competing nationally, and they just, you know, they were young, so they were hungry, so they just got better and better. And you know, the team's just evolved.
And when did your husband start coaching the team?
He was coaching it at the very beginning. They were actually called Spider Brand. They were sponsored by Spider Brand, which was a company that made heavy bags and gym bags and stuff, and focus shields and stuff like that. So they sponsored the team at the beginning, and then, you know, Steve Babcock was a member of the team, and they just kind of were all talking like, does anyone know someone, you know, like they were getting some help with some entry fees and stuff, but that was really it.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve had mentioned that he knew John Paul, you know, the owner of Paul Mitchell Systems, and you know, no, at that time, I mean, they didn't even know really about the company.
Right.
You know, it was so that's where the whole story came from. Is Steve talked to, you know, his friend who owned the company, and he decided to sponsor the team, and he's been very happy with the team ever since. And you know, they've always treated the sponsorship well. You know, sometimes people do not, and you know, they have a sponsor for a year and they don't want to do it again. You know, so if they're seeing good things come out of it, then they'll put the money aside for it. You know.
Mm-hmm. And talk about your husband as a coach for you.
As a coach for me, well, you know, he was always my instructor, and then eventually we started dating, and I ended up marrying him. You know, so it's tough in the school sometimes because, you know, I always he's a higher rank than I am. You know, he's my instructor, so you keep that professional, as you know, showing your respect and everything else, and then, you know, when we're at home, we're equal, and don't.
No, I don't think that you're equal. I'm married for a long time. You've got a little bit of an edge, I'm sure.
Well, we you know, you have to separate the two, and then also at the school there's also the business partnership, so it's not just student instructor, but on the business end, you know, we're equals, and it's you know, I might have a better idea than he does, or he has a better idea on something, and you know, so you know, it's a good combination. We work well together. I think any relationship, if you're with the person 24/7, you're gonna fight or argue, and you know, a lot of couples have two separate jobs, and then they come home at night and have dinner together, talk about their day, and they're not spending the entire day together. Although we run the school together, we barely see each other. You know, so we have 4 different classrooms. So even if he's at the school, like, we hardly ever teach a class together. I mean, very, very rarely. So he might be teaching an adult class on one side, I'm teaching a kids class or a Krav Maga class, or I'm teaching kickboxing and he's the black belt class. So we're always like different directions, and you know, you know, even with tournaments and stuff, a lot of times, you know, for the longest time, either he went or I went, because we had the kids at home and in the school and everything else to kind of focus on. Someone needed to be here. So we would take turns. And lately, the last couple of years, it's been mostly me going to, you know, go to the tournaments and judge and support those events. And then, he's been staying back. But yeah, it's a lot of juggling, even though we're in the same field and in the same business and in the same building. We don't see each other. It gets so hectic. We don't see each other a lot. So
Well, I can understand how that dynamic works because I've been with my wife since I started my school. We started it together, and there's times where before we had kids that we were on the floor together, we were in the school together 24/7, always talking about the business. Everything was about that. And then when we had kids, that's where things kind of, separated a little bit because she had to focus on what they're doing on school, then their activities, sports and stuff like that. And then now that our kids are 18 and 21, we have this nice, working relationship again. Although sometimes she's passing going to this event and I'm passing going to the school, or, we're always tag team in something. So I definitely get that. I want to ask one question because we're getting near to the end, and I didn't ask this earlier, but in the bio, you mentioned that you're two of the only three people that have been certified by three pioneers in the Kenpo system, and one of those being Ed Parker. And I just that draws a little attention to me because I'm a huge Elvis fan, right? So Elvis is a Kenpo black belt. Tell me now, did you ever train with Ed Parker?
With seminars and attended seminars from him, and then I tested in front of him for my third was the last one I tested in front of him. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was it was different because at the time I didn't do Parker Kenpo, so my husband was certified by Master Parker, and so the first time I tested in front of him, I just showed him, what I knew for the Oki-Ryu Kenpo system and stuff, and he certified me. But then when I tested the second time for my third degree, I had learned some of the Parker self-defenses and stuff. So I was able to show him, some of the stuff that he teaches, on the test and everything. So, that was definitely a very nice experience to be able to test in front of him. And I had tested in front of Nick Cerio many times, coming up from my first degree up. And I think a lot of it had to do too with when I was dating my husband. He never wanted to be the one promoting me. He wanted me to test in front of other grandmasters and people out there. So that it was, had more legitimacy to it rather than, okay, he promoted his girlfriend or his wife, to a certain rank. So, I tested with them. And then later on it was with Master George Pesare. So he had promoted me to my 9th, and then had passed away after that. But yeah, so that's it's kind of cool because they all kind of have their own style of Kenpo as well. Parker Kenpo and Nick Cerio Kenpo is very different. They're both Kenpo styles, but you can definitely see the differences when you watch either someone do their self-defense or their forms in competition or something. You can definitely see the differences, and the same thing with George Pesare. So it's definitely an honor to be able to say that, because all three of them are no longer here, that able to test in front of all three of them.
How is Oki-Ryu Kenpo different than other Kenpo systems?
Well, Oki-Ryu means open system. So it's an open system of Kenpo. And, when my husband was training under Professor Cerio, and as he was coming up and wanted to open his own school, he didn't want to be teaching exactly the Nick Cerio system. He had trained with other people in Kung Fu, and he had learned different things from different instructors, George Pesare and so on. So he kind of like made his own system, and the forms are similar, but they have their differences. So then, they're just, it's an open system because he does take some of the stuff that he learned in the Kung Fu system, or, we have different arm locks, wrist locks, which is more like the jujitsu moves and different moves like that, or the throwing that's incorporated with judo and aikido. And so, it's kind of a compilation of everything that he did when he created the system. And yeah, so I mean, now we teach a lot of Ed Parker system as well. We usually do that after black belt. I will teach some of the Parker techniques and stuff that we had learned. So it's a good compilation of Kenpo overall.
Yeah. Well, last question. What are your thoughts on the current tournament scene now?
I think, it's really evolved over the years. There's so many divisions now. I mean, you got your 4 and under and your 5-year-olds all the way to the 60 and up master division. And then you have your creative and your musical and your extreme divisions, which have really evolved as far as, like back when I was competing, doing a tornado kick, that's as a 360 kick, or going a little bit past that and doing a 540 was, quite the trick. And doing a no hand cartwheel into a split or something was like, bring the whole audience on their feet. And now they're doing, I mean, even my son, he does, I don't know if it's 11, so I don't know. He spins like 4 times in the air before he throws a kick. I mean, I'm like, I have to watch it on video to slow motion it to count them. I'm like, oh, what the heck did you just do? I'm like, it's crazy the stuff that they can actually do nowadays. I mean, the level of skill in that area is just really, really evolved. I think the traditional was kind of taking a back seat for a while, but now with the Olympics and everything else, it's really elevated, the traditional form competition. I think, you have people that are interested in being in the Olympics, so that their training level is, extremely intense. And, I just think the traditional divisions are very strong, and it's really coming back a lot. And fighting, I don't know. It's, they're faster than God knows what compared to, so many years ago. I mean, they're so fast, the fighters. But, I think back in the day, it would be like, that reverse punch, that would be like, put a hole through your chest, so it has some differences, it's the champions of the past and the champions of today are they're still champion in my eyes. It's just kind of different scenarios, back with not wearing gear and just having, I think, better control, as sometimes they hit really hard nowadays because they're so padded up, but then other times, it's more of a game of tag because they're just so fast and they're just going for those techniques. But the biggest thing with the fighting, I think, right now is that the women's divisions are a lot smaller than they used to be. So, I don't know for what reason, but trying to build that back up and get those women out there competing, because we all know in the schools, I mean, my school's almost, my husband and my school, we probably close to 50-50 as far as male, female. So, and I know a lot of schools are like that. So that's not the reason. It's, there were a lot less females back in the day, but a lot more competitors. So,
right.
So it's just a matter of getting them back out there and giving them incentive to be out there.
Yeah. Well, the sport has definitely evolved, which I think is a good thing. Martial arts has evolved. I mean, everything we do, technology has evolved. So I think that that's just going to continue. But I am happy to see that there's still that outlet out there for people. It's not necessarily for everybody, but it is an opportunity for students who want to get out there and compete and push themselves to be their best. So thank you so much for your time today. And thanks for sharing stories with me and helping me get to know you a lot better. I hope that everybody else watching today took something from this. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to share the video and go to Master Motivation Podcast on YouTube and make sure to subscribe for future upcoming videos. If you could hang out for just 60 seconds, I'd love to talk with you just a few seconds offline. But for everybody else, thank you guys for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks.